Business Intelligence and Game Theory. Prologue. Game theory is the branch of applied mathematics that studies tactical situations in which opponents choose different actions in an attempt to optimize results. The game is a strategy of choice in competition. When comparing benefits, choose the more profitable. When comparing harms, choose the less harmful, in order to win-win. But, how to help yourself win? That's the problem that game theory has to solve. Life is a process of constantly choosing, constantly participating in games. If you know how to use your intellect and win the game completely, you have succeeded in the true sense. With tight texture, through vivid stories. The book presents and analyzes nearly 100 brain games applied by most successful people in the world, to help you prepare for daily life as well as in business activities. Chapter 1, Choice is a Game. Get rid of the entanglement of sunk costs. How to get rid of the entanglement of sunk costs. 1 is to make prudent decisions and master the information, thereby comprehensively assessing the benefits and harms. 2nd, when unsuccessful, we must accept reality to avoid greater losses. Anecdote. In response to the state's call for quality education, a mother spent 1,500 yuan to buy an electronic guitar for her child. But the child, who was hyperactive, did not like to learn music, so the electronic guitar was lined up to catch dust. Not long after, the mother heard from a colleague that she knew a good music teacher from a music academy and immediately invited him to be a tutor. Her reason is simple: if you have already bought it, you must learn, if only by inviting a tutor to teach, otherwise you will waste the guitar. So every month, the mother lost another 600 tutoring fees, continuously for 6 months, a total of 3,600 yuan, but finally gave up. Not wanting to waste the 1,500 yuan electronic guitar, the mother wasted another 3,600 yuan in vain. Analysis according to game theory. In game theory, we call costs that have been incurred, not recoverable, such as time, money, energy, is the sunk cost. Sunk costs are the costs you incur before you officially complete the transaction. Once the trade is not completed, you will lose money. But if you are too nostalgic for sunk costs, you will continue to make mistakes and suffer greater losses. Sunk costs have a tremendous effect on decision-making, leaving many discerning investors confused as well. Many times we start doing something, halfway through discovering that we should not do it, but at that time, the cost is too much. On second thought, we can only keep doing. But in reality, continuation will often cause greater damage. Get rid of inferiority, take chances. Letting go of low self-esteem to take chances is not only an optimal choice but also an expression of wisdom. Anecdote. In his childhood, Li Yang was a very shy person. Although shy, Li Yang was studious, so he passed the Lanzhou University entrance exam. Despite this, Li Yang was still very shy, even skipping class for fear of meeting strangers. He was almost invited out of school by Lanzhou University. At that time, Li Yang's English results were very bad. He often had to retake the exam to meet the requirements. In his second year of university, he was forced to take the National Level 4 English exam, otherwise he would not get a diploma. This time, Li Yang was forced to overcome difficulties. Every morning, he went to study English. After school, he went to the most hidden corners of the school garden to practice reading. After such a few weeks, he gradually gained confidence. From then on, every time, Li Yang would go to crowded places and speak loudly like a crazy guy. Sometimes, he even wore janitorial shoes, baggy pants, earrings, and tried to scream in the school garden. Then, to make a breakthrough, Li Yang wrote a presentation about how he felt about learning English. He asked his classmates to help him post a notice that a man named Li Yang wanted to hold a talk about English. The night before the presentation, Li Yang was extremely nervous, but the next day he still walked to the podium with his heart racing. The presentation was an unexpected success. Just like that, Li Yang continued to promote and held dozens of discussions, thus becoming a celebrity in the school. No matter what others think, he does as he pleases. He compiled about 10 English books, placing second in the Level 4 exam. The English that scared him the most brought him the joy of success. His eccentricity went beyond school and spread across the country. Analysis according to game theory. In the battle of choice between inferiority and opportunity, the person who seizes the opportunity is the one who succeeds in career and life. The simpler the better. In the game between costs and benefits, choosing simplicity both helps you reduce costs and improve productivity, enabling you to achieve success. Anecdote. One day, Einstein met a friend on the streets of New York. "Mr. Einstein," said the friend, "looks like you need to buy a new jacket. Look, the shirt on you is so old, what's wrong?" "No one in New York knows me anyway," Einstein said bluntly. A few years later, they met by chance again. By this time, Einstein had a great reputation, but still wore that old coat. His friend advised him to buy a new coat. "Ha, isn't it?" Einstein said, "Who doesn't know me here?" Analysis according to game theory. The story advises us to choose simplicity in the game between costs and benefits received. This can reduce costs, improve productivity, and make it easier for you to achieve success. Think about it, if Einstein had always been interested in what jacket to wear, who to impress, he might not have invented the theory of relativity. Reduce the opportunity cost of selection. Game theory holds that any human choice has an opportunity cost. In order to reduce the opportunity cost of the choice, we need to derive from the real situation, properly assess the abandoned opportunity. Anecdote. Suppose there are 2 barrels of apples, one full of fresh and delicious fruits, the other because it has been left for a long time, so some fruits have degraded. Which barrel should you eat first, i.e. eat good apples or spoiled apples first? There are 2 typical ways of eating. The first is to eat the spoiled fruit first, peeling off the rotten part. This way of eating makes you often have to eat spoiled apples, because when you eat all the spoiled apples, the fresh apples also rot. The second is to eat the most delicious fruits first, then the worse ones. In this way, you usually cannot eat all the apples, because when you eat all the delicious apples, the spoiled apples can no longer be eaten, but in return, you can eat delicious apples, enjoy the taste of fresh apples. Analysis according to game theory. Game theory holds that any human choice has an opportunity cost. The concept of opportunity cost highlights the fact that any option has waste, having to give up others. In real life, for the opportunity to be abandoned, each person will have different desires and judgments depending on their subjective judgment, subjective opportunity cost. Specifically on the issue of which apples to eat first, the 2 ways of eating represent 2 types of conceptions, 2 types of subjective judgments about opportunity cost. The subjective judgment of the first way of eating is that the opportunity cost of being wasted outweighs the opportunity cost of enjoying delicious apples. The subjective judgment of the second way of eating is that the opportunity cost of enjoying delicious apples outweighs the opportunity cost of being wasted. In our daily lives, we are often faced with the choice of which apple to eat first, so we need to be conscious in choosing opportunity costs. Avoid piling up mistakes. Once a mistake has been made, what we need to do is not regret but consider giving up to minimize losses. Anecdote. A mother sent her child with a large bowl to buy soy sauce. The boy went to the store, returned the seller 2 trenches. The soy sauce was filled with bowls, a little left over. The soy sauce seller asked the child, "Baby, where's this extra soy sauce poured?" "Uncle, pour down the bowl for me." Saying that, the boy turned the bowl of soy sauce upside down and used the bowl to hold the excess soy sauce. The soy sauce in the bowl splattered all over the ground, but it still took some soy sauce home. Arriving home, the mother asked, "Son, can you only buy this much soy sauce?" The boy said triumphantly, "The bowl is not empty, so I have the rest of the soy sauce in the bowl. Don't worry, it's still here." After saying that, the boy turned the bowl upside down, and some of the soy sauce in the bowl also poured down. Analysis according to game theory. In fact, Many of us are playing this boy who, despite making mistakes, still fail to recognize and correct them, making them even more compounded. Game theory experts call this situation a coordination problem. After we have spotted mistakes and self-examined, we must work on the next task. Life is like a hurdle competition. We should not collide and knock down a barrier, but less knocking down a barrier does not add points. We just need to jump out in the shortest time. If you keep regretting and regretting a fallen fence, the final achievement will surely suffer. Have the courage to succeed. In the game, to win completely, we must have courage. Anecdote. On the vast savanna, in contention for the excess meat of a bison left behind by lions, a pack of wolves came into conflict with the hyenas. Although hyenas die a lot, because they outnumber wolves, they also bite a lot of wolves. In the end, only the leading wolf and 5 hyenas were left to confront each other. Obviously, the forces on both sides were very different, let alone the legs of the wolf leader who had been injured in the melee. That hind leg dragging on the ground became a burden entangled by the wolf leader. The hyena stepped closer, and suddenly, the wolf leader turned and bit off his injured leg and rushed to pounce on the nearest hyena, cutting its throat as fast as electricity. The remaining 4 hyenas were horrified by the actions of the wolf leader, all standing buried in place, not daring to advance. Finally, the 4 hyenas dragged their tired bodies, taking steps away from the wolf leader staring at them. Analysis according to game theory. In the face of dangerous circumstances, the leading wolf knew how to sacrifice a leg to preserve his life, which was a reluctant but also very smart choice. But many of us don't have this courage and wisdom and often fall into the trap of the alligator principle. The content of the crocodile principle is that if you are bitten by a crocodile, the more you struggle, the tighter you bite. In fact, the wise way to do it is to sacrifice your leg to be able to preserve your life. Chapter 2, Turning Weaknesses into Strengths. Empty-handed. In a situation of lack of resources, are there any strategies that both benefit yourself and others, i.e. make a multiplayer game win-win? The answer is yes, it's empty-handed. Anecdote. In rural America, an old man gave birth to 3 sons. The eldest and second sons both worked in the city, the youngest lived with his father. Suddenly one day someone came to find the old man and said, "Uncle, I want to take your youngest son to the city to work." The old man said angrily, "No. Absolutely not. You go for me." The other asked, "What if I find a wife for your son in the city?" The old man shook his head, "No. Hurry up." The other asked, "What if the wife I sought for your son, your future daughter-in-law, was Rockefeller's daughter?" The old man thought over and over, finally wavering at the fact that his son was made Rockefeller's bridegroom. A few days later, the man approached Rockefeller, the richest man in America, and said, "Dear Rockefeller, I want to find a husband for your daughter." Rockefeller said, "Hurry up." The other asked, "Would it be okay if the husband I found for your daughter, your future son-in-law, was the Deputy Director General of the World Bank?" So Rockefeller agreed. A few days later, he went to the Director General of the World Bank and said, "Dear Director General, you should immediately appoint a Deputy Director General." The superintendent said, "It can't be, there are so many vice presidents here. Why should we appoint another Deputy General, and it must be immediately?" The other said, "If the deputy you appointed was Rockefeller's son-in-law, wouldn't it matter?" The superintendent naturally agreed. So the old man's son lost nothing, but also became Deputy Director General of the World Bank and took Rockefeller's daughter as his wife. Analysis according to game theory. Although the above story is a joke, the wisdom it radiates is worth studying. On the way to creating a career, many people often complain of having no capital, no human resources and no resources to help them succeed. Actually, common sense isn't wrong. But in the modern market economy, many people in a state of lack of capital have not only benefited themselves but also others, executing a multi-person win-win game. They have relied on the game wisdom empty-handed. So what is a no-cap move? Defined in scientific terms, it is a clever way of using the human, material and financial resources of others to carry out one's own creative and unique plan within the scope permitted by law and ethics. Those who successfully use this method have invented more high-level hand-to-hand attacks. Technique 1. The grassboat borrowed the name. The grassboat borrowed the name of Confucius Ming, which was imitated by later generations and applied in all areas of life. A young man has a hobby of keeping pigeons. As the pigeons grew, his economy also gradually tightened. Faced with that situation, he was worried about how. Until one day, he suddenly saw small birds in the flower park not far from his house that some tourists threw for pieces of food. Seeing this, the boy thought of his pigeon. So on his day off, he took his pigeons to the garden. Sure enough, people who came to the excursion next to each other threw food to the pigeons, even joked with them, some even took the opportunity to take pictures. After a day, the pigeons were well fed, which helped the boy save money to buy food for them. The young man was not so satisfied. He came up with a better way, which was to sell pet food bags in the flower park, both profitably and raising pigeons. The young man quit his job and dedicated himself to selling pigeon food in the garden, earning more than his original salary. He saved money while raising pigeons. The flower park near his home also became a new place to visit. Using tourists' money to raise pigeons and make a profit is a clever method. It inherited and promoted the magic design of the firstborn Confucius to the extreme. Technique 2. Thread threads the needle. Threading needles is also a no-catch technique often used by successful people. Using this technique requires manipulation like sewing, using needles and extremely low-cost threads to skillfully sew pieces of fabric that are not related to each other into a high-value finished product. The protagonist below has succeeded by applying this method. A radio factory in that city bought a color television production line a few years ago. After that, due to the failure to sell goods, the business switched production industries. The production line becomes a pile of scrap, a lump of debt of the factory, leaving unfortunately but wasting capital. After hearing the news, a person surnamed Chu patted his chest and said, "Let me buy it all." But he made a condition: buy it back at the original price of 1 million yuan, but take the goods first, pay later, and at the same time calculate a profit of 200,000 yuan, a total of 1.2 million yuan, a year later pay off once. The radio plant was relieved to finally unload its burden, not knowing that the Chu had played a game of empty-handed. Threading threads threads needles. Threading threads threading needles is also a no-catch hand technique often used by successful people. Using this technique requires manipulation like sewing, using needles and extremely low-cost threads to skillfully sew pieces of fabric that are not related to each other into a high-value finished product. The protagonist below has succeeded by applying this method. A radio factory in that city bought a color television production line a few years ago. After that, due to the failure to sell goods, the business switched production industries. The production line becomes a pile of scrap, a lump of debt of the factory, leaving unfortunately but wasting capital. After hearing the news, a person surnamed Chu patted his chest and said, "Let me buy it all." But he made a condition: buy it back at the original price of 1 million yuan, but take the goods first, pay later, and at the same time calculate a profit of 200,000 yuan, a total of 1.2 million yuan, a year later pay off once. The radio plant was relieved to finally unload its burden, not knowing that the Chu had played a game of empty-handed. At the time, Russia desperately needed to buy more color TV production lines, but it had cheap and high-quality, world-famous yachts. First, the Chu family plans to exchange a color TV production line worth 1 million yuan for a luxury yacht worth more than 1.2 million yuan. After that, he used the yacht to organize sightseeing, fun and entertainment programs on the Shangjiang River. Because this is a famous tourist city, people travel a lot. Moreover, there is a small island with enchanting scenery, so the leisure tourism business here guarantees prosperity. Second, the Chu family members set up a company, used yachts as collateral, borrowed money from banks, used loans to buy land to build local houses or open general tourism service projects. Indeed, a year later, he earned 5 million yuan, paid the radio plant 1.2 million yuan, and made a profit of 3.8 million yuan. Of course, the no-catch move isn't just that much. Just be skillful, we will know how to flexibly use this technique to make a multiplayer game win. Anecdote. During the Warring States period, there was a small state called Zhongshan. Once the king of Zhongzhou set up a treat for domestic celebrities. At that time, the goat meat soup was too little, not enough for everyone to eat. There was a man who had not eaten goat meat soup named Shimazuchi, who held hatred in his heart, so he went to Chu to advise King Chu to send troops to fight Zhongshan. At that time, Chu was a strong country, and beat Zhongshan like a hand. The state of Zhongshan was quickly attacked, and the king of Zhongshan had to flee. Seeing two men with weapons following him, he asked, "What have you come to do?" They replied, "There was a man once who was given a jar of food by you without starving. We are his sons. Before he died, my father told me that if the country of Zhongshan changed, we must devote all our strength, without risking our lives, to repay the king." The king of Zhongshan heard it and said, "What an irony! I lost water because of a bowl of goat meat soup, now thanks to a jar of food that saved my life." Analysis according to game theory. The king of Zhongshan lost water because of his negligence with Shimazuchi, but because of an accidental reward, he was rewarded by two braves. This gives us a hint: we must be nice to those around us. People who want to do great things must first know how to borrow resources and strength from others into their own strength, thereby moving towards success. Turn enemies into friends. The weak can yield to turn the enemy into a friend, thereby borrowing the enemy's strength to help him succeed. Anecdote. The owner of a farm and a hunter are neighbors. The owner of the ranch raises a lot of sheep, and his neighbor keeps a herd of hunting dogs. These dogs frequently jump over fences attacking flocks of sheep. The owner of the ranch several times asked the hunter to keep the dog careful, but the hunter ignored it, only answering tears. A few days later, the dogs jumped over to the farm again, injuring the sheep. The rancher could no longer sit idly by, suing the hunter in the local court, seeking damages from the hunter. Having heard his complaint, the judge said, "I can punish the hunter, I can order his dog to be locked up, but then you will lose a friend, gain an enemy. Do you want to be neighbors to enemies or neighbors to friends?" The rancher said, "Of course I want to be neighbors to my friends." "Well then, I tell you this. By doing it my way, you can not only ensure your sheep are no longer harassed, but also help you have a friendly neighbor." The judge only painted for a moment, and the rancher nodded in praise. Arriving home, the rancher, according to the judge, selects the 3 most beautiful sheep to give to the hunter's 3 sons. Seeing the gentle white sheep, the children were glad to catch gold. Every day, after school, they go to the yard to play with the sheep. Fearing that the children's sheep would be attacked by dogs, the hunter made an iron cage to trap them. Since then, the farmer's sheep are no longer harassed, and the relationship between the two families is also very harmonious. Analysis according to game theory. The intellectual master of this game theory is also Bill Gates. In December 2003, Real Networks filed a lawsuit in U.S. federal court suing Microsoft for abusing its position in Windows to restrict PC makers from pre-installing other media software, regardless of whether Windows users wanted it or not, to force them to use the default Windows Media Player software. Real Networks is seeking $1 billion in damages. However, things have developed in a truly unexpected direction. When the lawsuit was not yet finalized, Real Networks CEO Rob Glazer sent a phone call to Bill Gates asking for technical assistance from Microsoft to be able to play his music files on networks and mobile devices. Everyone assumed that Bill Gates would definitely refuse, but surprisingly, Gates agreed to this proposal. Microsoft and Real Networks then reached a $761 million settlement agreement. Under the agreement, Microsoft agreed to include Real Networks Rhapsody service in its MSN Search, MSN Information and MSN Music services, and make it a viable service of Windows Media Player 10. One lawsuit was successfully mediated. People living in society inevitably cause enmity towards others. How to handle relationships with these enemies well. Remember, one more friend is one more path, one more enemy is one more wall. At the appropriate time, let's side with the enemy, turn the enemy into a friend, borrow the enemy's strength to succeed together. Multi-scheming, advantageous to do. The reason some people succeed is because they deeply understand the principle of the game of advantage. Anecdote. On a sweltering afternoon, a buffalo was resting under a tree not far from the river bank. At this time, a sparrow flies to perch on the branches, kindly talking to the buffalo. Buffalo asked, "Why are you so free to come here today?" The sparrow said, "I did not come to play, but to drink water." Buffalo asked, "You drink water and go to the big river? Isn't it enough to drink one drop?" The sparrow laughed, "Do you believe it? I drink more water than you." Buffalo laughed, "How is that?" The sparrow said, "Let's try it. You drink first." He knew the tide was coming. The buffalo plunged into the river, opened his mouth wide, and tried to drink. But no matter how much he drank, the river water not only did not fall, but on the contrary was more. The buffalo was full of stomach, unable to drink anymore. When the tide was about to fall, new sparrows flew in, plunging their beaks into the water. The water was down, and sparrows flew after them. Buffalo sadly, "You little boy who can drink a lot of water, are you dressed?" The sparrow asked the buffalo with a smile and then took off and flew away, leaving the buffalo staring dumbly at the river without being able to understand why. Analysis according to game theory. In the story, the sparrow easily defeats the buffalo because it knows how to do it. History has witnessed many changes of the times. The person who stays at the top is obviously rare. The reason these people are successful is because they are multi-scheming and deeply understand the principle of the advantageous game. The key to doing this is to accurately judge and grasp the process of growth, climax and weakening of the trend, thereby seizing the opportunity to succeed. Analysis according to game theory. In the story, the sparrow easily defeats the buffalo because it knows how to do it. History has witnessed many changes of the times. The person who stays at the top is obviously rare. The reason these people are successful is because they are multi-scheming and deeply understand the principle of the advantageous game. The key to doing this is to accurately judge and grasp the process of growth, climax and weakening of the trend, thereby seizing the opportunity to succeed. Leverage the power of communication. From a game theory perspective, borrowing the media to speculate is clearly a strategy that turns weaknesses into strengths. Anecdote. In 1992, the new headquarters building of Olek Swatch was completed. The company is carrying out PR activities and the inauguration ceremony of the building. Suddenly one day, a flock of pigeons flew into a rooftop room and nested here. This may seem to have nothing to do with the company, but Mr. Lee, the marketing director, is overjoyed. He immediately ordered the doors closed, quickly guarding and feeding the birds. Since he was struggling to organize his PR activities, he realized that this was the perfect opportunity to expand the company's influence. Mr. Lee reported the pigeons flying into the building to the Society for the Protection of Animals, combined with the hot animal protection movement at the time, then deliberately promoted it, cleverly revealing it to the media. The media was excited, quickly dispatching reporters to the newly inaugurated building for interviews and reporting on the spot. At Mr. Lee's request, the Animal Protection Association sent a dedicated person to protect and ensure the pigeons returned safely to the wild. The operation lasted for 3 days. During these 3 days, the media constantly reported on the act of protecting pigeons, which made the public especially interested in the event. Moreover, articles in the form of news, specifications, reports, and commentary have turned gossip into a hot spot that has brought the whole society to attention to Olek's company and its new headquarters building. At that time, the company's leaders naturally did not pass up the opportunity to polish their names for free. They take advantage of being constantly in newspapers and radio to introduce the company's business principles and motto to the public, thereby enhancing the company's reputation. This PR operation won a big win. Analysis according to game theory. This is the age of media enrichment. It can create thousands of stars from very small things. It can also create thousands of famous businesses and entrepreneurs. Therefore, if we want to succeed quickly, we need to take advantage of the media, keep up with the progress of the times, create feverish events and characters and new concepts, attract people's attention. Take advantage of the reputation of others. If you are unknown while others are extremely famous, why not be a smart idiot, taking advantage of other people's fame to your advantage? Anecdote. In the 50s of the 20th century, George L.S. Johnson's Cosmetics dominated the entire black cosmetics market in the United States. The cosmetics company aimed at black people was founded by George L.S. Johnson with a total investment of $500, and 3 employees are typical small companies. Johnson had to rack his brain at the question, what does it take to get the company to grow quickly? Eventually, he devised a way to use someone else's product as the basis for his own. On the ad, he wrote, after applying Foley Company cosmetics and applying Johnson's liquid powder, you will see unexpected effects. Everyone in the company wondered, aren't you advertising for the Foley Company? Could someone in the world be advertising for their competitors? Isn't their reputation growing like alcohol? Ellis Johnson replied with a laugh, it's because they're popular now while I'm still an unknown that I have to do that. How many people in America know about our L.S. Johnson brand? But if I tried to appear with the President of the United States, what would people think? I'm definitely going to be a celebrity everybody knows. The rules for selling cosmetics are similar. That approach is indeed extremely effective. Johnson's products were quickly embraced by consumers. The number of sales of the company was increasing. Analysis according to game theory. Being famous is synonymous with wide influence and great summons. Marketing by borrowing someone else's reputation is a good, mutually beneficial choice. In game theory, this method has a very wide range of applications. It can not only be applied in the marketplace but also can be applied to all aspects of life. However, taking advantage of the reputation of others does not mean harming the interests of the other person. It needs to be built on a win-win basis.